My public advice to President Trump's legal team, Mr. Producer, it's team, T-E-A-M, not time. The Biden administration has created a legal morass never seen or experienced in American history, as applies to a presidential election. The Attorney General appointed by the Democrat president is authorizing indictment after indictment of his president's possible, if not likely, political opponent in the middle of a presidential election cycle. He's doing so through his appointment of a special counsel, whose appointment was a misapplication of the special counsel regulation, and whose charges must be approved by the Attorney General himself. And parenthetically, by the way, as an important side issue, Jack Smith is not a presidential appointee. He never even stood for confirmation by the Senate to hold the position, check for typos, Rich, to hold the position he holds and to exercise the authority he is exercising against a party opponent. It should be noted at the same time the Attorney General refuses to appoint an outside special counsel to investigate his client, Joe Biden, despite the fact the Department of Justice regulation was originally instituted for these exact circumstances. Of course, this underscores the purpose and motive of what is taking place before us today. The Attorney General is approving the timing of dozens of charges against the former Republican president, who is actively seeking his party's nomination to challenge the Democrat president for whom he directly reports, which are intended to cripple the ability of Donald Trump to effectively run for president, regardless of what polls show today. Regardless of what the commentariats say, and despite President Trump's strength within the Republican Party, the outcome of the election is unknown. Therefore, the polls are irrelevant in this regard. Moreover, as further evidence that these indictments are being used as political weapons are the timing of the charges. Specifically, all of these charges by the separate grand juries, all controlled by the special counsel, should have been filed after the election, as there was no possibility the statute of limitations would run on any of them. Furthermore, the special counsel repeatedly insists that the charges must be quickly adjudicated, meaning before the people vote, for the purpose of having maximum influence on the election. In addition, the charges have resulted in the significant depletion of Trump's campaign funds to pay for millions in legal fees. Trump has to take significant time from campaigning to address the dozens of charges dropped on him by the Biden administration. That is, he has to expend an enormous amount of time working with his lawyers in order to defend himself from charges that collectively would result in his imprisonment until his death. The fact is that this kind of legal warfare against a presidential and possible, if not likely, opponent to the present president is not only unprecedented in the history of our republic, it will destroy our electoral system for all time. It is not something that should be left to various district courts or local courts to sort out in the course of regular judicial proceedings. In fact, that is part of the intended strategy by the prosecutors who are engaged in this assault on our electoral system. They must not be rewarded for their behavior. They must not be rewarded for their treachery and exploitation of the legal system and the courts to achieve their political ends. Even while getting to the merits of these multitude of charges, which are easily unraveled from my perspective, the process is what is being used to interfere with the election. And the near silence by those who are orchestrating this shocking legal warfare, when the American people are left in the dark, is untenable. Therefore, I want to publicly encourage the Trump legal team to seek an emergency hearing before the United States Supreme Court, not to resolve legal disputes, but to at least temporarily halt the abomination of this legal warfare that is unfolding in front of us, where Democrats and anti-Trump Republicans are unashamedly celebrating the use of the courts by the Biden administration and Democrat district attorneys to further their political wishes, as the rest of the nation watches in shock. This unprecedented legal warfare requires an unprecedented response by the only constitutional body left that can do something about it: the United States Supreme Court. This is my view, because what is taking place today in various courthouses and so forth and so on is part of the strategy. The legal system is slow. It is the process. It is a process that's the killer here. And they know it. And they're playing the process by unloading all these indictments, by taking Trump off the campaign field, by depleting his resources, by influencing people who are not like you and me, people who still vote, 2/3 of the nation that are not part of the Republican base. That's who this is aimed at. The polls don't matter. The polls and the pollsters are fickle. We should know that by now. And it's not about polls. And on top of all this, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden has been able to sit on a beach and laugh while his Department of Injustice does all the dirty work, while the Democrat DAs do all the dirty work, and the media do all the dirty work. You see, folks, I look at this holistically. That's what I do. And I get into the weeds, too, with the best of them. But you got to take a step back from time to time and say, what the hell's going on here? None of this is by coincidence. All of it is purposeful. If you have any shot at stopping it, you have to get past the trial courts, past the appellate courts, and within the time frame of this campaign, hope that the U.S. Supreme Court sees, at least 4 of them do, in order to take up a cert petition, what the rest of us see. This would not be the Supreme Court interfering in a political process. This would be the Supreme Court defending the Constitution. Never before has a political party and opponents of a candidate, never before have they sunk so low as to take the law and twist it into a pretzel like this. To use the law, to use grand juries, to use charging documents, to use subpoenas, search warrants, and activist judges appointed by the same party to undertake such treachery. And if, upon an emergency request of the Supreme Court turns its back, then there's no stopping this. Today, tomorrow, next election, for the rest of this republic's life, we're just getting shorter by the day. I look at people like Bill Barr, Chris Christie, Larry Hogan, and others. Trump brought this on himself, don't you know? No, he didn't. No, he didn't at all. The people who are doing it brought it on. I want to remind you about who Joe Biden is, and that he will sink to any level he must. When he thought it would help him back home to be a racist segregationist, he was a racist segregationist who literally opposed the integration of inner-city public schools. He was the George Wallace, the Orville Faubus of Delaware. He's a chameleon. He will do anything. He tried to destroy the reputation of one of the greatest legal minds this nation has ever seen, Bob Bork. What was Bob Bork's crime? He was a true constitutionalist. He was nominated to the United States Supreme Court by Ronald Reagan, so they destroyed him. Clarence Thomas, a black man, would not go down on bended knee and beg his white accusers on the Senate Judiciary Committee for their votes, defended himself against a typical stereotype used against black men by the Klansmen and others, accusing him of sexual harassment, if you will. Certainly there are justices on the Supreme Court who understand what I'm talking about, including the very disappointing Kavanaugh, including John Roberts, if he would actually wake up to reality and see what is taking place in this country. There's only one body left that, if asked, can and should step in and stop this abomination. It is destroying our country. We were reminded last night by an Israeli, Carolyn Glick, born in America, who said, one of the great legal minds in Israel who she spoke to said, in the United States, the Dred Scott decision, which was decided in 1857, the impact of that decision took a few years to really settle in, and it served as the foundation for the Civil War. Unfortunately, I believe we've reached this point. I don't say it to be provocative. I say it out of the gravest of concerns. I say it in order that we might avoid the potential of what could happen. A combustible situation. Because this can't go on forever. And when I hear media types say, we're kind of getting used to this, aren't we, Martha? Getting used to this. It's Thursday. It must be more indictments. 3 times now, and a 4th coming in Atlanta. This isn't a joke. This isn't a sporting event. This is serious to the survivability of this republic. I'm not getting used to any of it. I'm getting sick to my stomach every time it happens. You and I know in our heart of hearts that this is utterly and completely unjust. Alvin Bragg brought phony charges against Donald Trump. The case that was brought the other day, January 6th, utterly phony. A phony case. The documents case, or even the best of these so-called legal analysts, think it's a much tougher case. In truth, if the judge is really honest and has integrity, when, and I hope soon, the right motions are filed, she will throw that case out of her courtroom as fast as she possibly can. This is one political party trying to destroy another. This is one political party trying to monopolize elections, federal law enforcement, and the entire justice system. And if they get away with it, it's over. It's over.